The game is broken. He who sees the truth is the shocking story of a man who spent his life fighting for justice until he realized he was just a pawn in someone else's game. What if everything you've ever believed in is a lie? What if your fight benefits people you can't even see? Political activist Logan goes on an interview to expose the phenomenon, but instead is confronted with a truth that destroys his world. Who's really running the game? Is it possible to go beyond the system? And the big question, are you ready to learn more? Watch until the end. The ending will change your understanding of reality. Are you ready? This is your chance to change history. Logan felt the heat in his chest before the fight. Everything he had fought for his entire life, activism, protests, revelations, everything was leading him here. Live from the most controversial leadership of the leading country. Joe Hunter, the man hated by all who considered themselves enlightened. An elderly predator with a wolf smile who masterfully blew his conflicts to dust. Logan had seen hundreds of interviews like this. He had seen Hunter catch people in their natural words, turn their slogans into empty sounds. But today, everything would be different. I would have smashed that dinosaur. Ben, one of his comrades in the movement, slapped him on the shoulder. Logan shrugged. I will destroy him. The studio smelled of coffee and someone else's confidence. Cameras, lights, assistants, sound engineers, everything was ready. Logan sat down opposite Joe. The old man looked at him with the most expression, like a shark before an attack. Let's get straight to the point. Joe smiled, tilting his head. Why do you think we're marking time? Logan paused. He knew what to say. They had been preparing for this interview for weeks. Progress is happening. Yes, slowly, but we are fighting for justice. Joe smiled a little wider. Really? Or are you just holding the leash? Logan felt a slight sting from the offer. You mean? Are you sure you are fighting real enemies? Joe's voice was calm, almost fatherly. Logan chuckled. Are you talking about your conspiracy theories again? No, man. Joe shook his head. I mean reality. You're fighting a shadow while the real players laugh backstage. There was silence in the studio. Logan wanted to interrupt him, to say something harsh, but Joe turned to the screen behind him. Let me show you something. Graphs, statistics, documents appeared on the screen. Numbers, connections, sums. Here, Joe continues, has been funding your movement for the last 5 years. Look at the source. Notice anything interesting? Logan frowned. Some of the names were too familiar. It's a fake, he squeezed out. Joe shrugged. Maybe. But if it's true, you have to ask yourself, who's really running the game? Logan felt a cold pot on the back of his neck. He came here to destroy Joe Hunter. But what if he himself just started losing? Logan spoke through dry lips. His throat was tight. The screen in front of him flickered. Numbers, graphs, names, all of it seemed like meaningless noise. But fear had already begun to stir in the serious consciousness. That's a lie, he said. Joe, like Hunter, smiled and waited for exactly this state. Of course, he remarked. That's exactly what a pawn should think. Logan felt sorry for the cubes under the table. You didn't answer my question, Joe. If you think we use it, who will we use it for? The ones who bet on this match. Joe bowed his head. The ones who convinced you that you're the hero of this story. Logan leaned forward. Stop dead people with cheap phrases. Speak directly. Hunter exhaled, as if deciding whether to continue. Okay, you want the truth? Then get ready. He appeared to the assistant, and the screen came to life again. Have you ever wondered why every movement, technology of revolution, technology of victory, of activists ultimately, changes nothing? Logan opened his mouth, but Joe beat him to it. Let's remember, you were at dozens of rallies. People took to the streets, demanding change. And what? A week later, everything was as it was. Why? Because the system is too powerful, Logan snapped. Joe shook his head. No. The reason is that the system is not a building, not laws, not politics. It is a game, and you are not a player in it. Logan frowned. Are you saying that we are puppets? I want to say that someone always wins. The only question is who. The screen changed. Logan saw pictures of people whose names he knew all too well. Politicians, businessmen, even some of his allies. Look here. Who are they to you? Logan swallowed. Leaders. Activists. People who make money. Joe interrupted. Always. Look at their growth. Every move, every campaign. A boost in popularity, donations, influence. They promise you change, but what do you get? Logan didn't answer. You know the answer. Joe continues. You just don't want to hear it. Somewhere in the studio a switch flicked. Logan felt his breath shake. He fell silent, unable to find the words. Yes, Logan. Hunter leaned forward. It's checkmate. There was silence in the studio. For the first time in a long time, Logan didn't know what to say. Logan sat staring at the screen, Joe Hunter's words echoing in his head. Checkmate, the old man repeated. Logan straightened up, trying to pull himself together. It's just a coincidence, he said, nodding at the charts. Manipulation. You state facts, but you don't explain the cause and effect relationships. Joe chuckled. What if I explain? Are you ready to hear it? Logan was silent. Let's try this another way, Hunter continues. Name one victory for your movement in the last 10 years that fundamentally changed the system. Not a cosmetic change in the law, not a symbolic gesture. A real victory. Logan opened his mouth and fell silent. Hundreds of rallies, slogans, demonstrations flashed before my eyes. Petitions, bills, victories delayed in Parliament. But what has really changed? Joe had an unusual way of reading his mind. Exactly. You can't name a single one. Logan gritted his teeth. This does not mean that the struggle is useless. Fighting is important, Joe says frankly. Just not when your enemies have written the script for you in advance. Logan shook his head. This is nonsense. You just want to make us look like fools. No, Joe paused. I want to wake you up. He turned into an assistant, and the screen changed to a new image. Documents. Correspondence. Financial reports. Logan knew the names. The people who had stood on the same platforms as him. The people whose slogans he quoted. The ones who taught him that to fight was to believe. And behind their backs is me, who financed their negotiations. Logan sank into his chair. This is impossible. This is reality, Joe said. You've always been a pawn in someone else's game. And now you have a choice. Stay in it or finally figure out who's playing the player. Logan shrugged. If you were so smart, tell me, how to fix this? Joe just chuckled. That, my friend, is for you to find out for yourself. There was silence in the studio. And in Logan's head there is a hurricane attack. Logan felt his hands sweating, a mixture of anger and atmosphere seething inside him. He came here to destroy Joe Hunter. And instead, he came here cornered. Okay, so the system is manipulating us, he said, old and confident. But what do you think we should do about it? Joe leaned back in his chair and put his hands on his chest. That's your problem, buddy. His gaze became clear, almost sympathetic. You want change? Fine. But you don't understand the main thing. And what is that? Logan narrowed his eyes. Joe leaned forward. The game is broken. There was silence in the studio. What are you talking about? Logan frowned. You act like there are rules to this system. Like you can play better, smarter, harder, and win. But you don't even realize it. Joe chuckled. You're playing a rigged game. Logan shrugged. You speak in riddles. Okay, Joe said suddenly, turning back to the screen. Let me explain it more simply. Maps appeared on the monitor, complex network arrows, names, logos. Look here. These are the connections between activists, politicians, corporations, media. These are the mechanisms that drive your movement. Logan frowned. So what? Everyone has a connection. Yes, but not everyone has owners. He snapped his fingers, and the map changed. Those Logan had thought were independent leaders were suddenly faced with problems with these international corporations they had expected to be fighting against. Do you understand now? You are not fighting the system. You are part of its mechanism. Logan felt his insides tighten. This is not true. It's true, Joe said. You can hate it, deny it, be angry, but you see it. Logan exhaled sharply. If everything is so bad, if everything is so hopeless, why are you showing me this at all? Joe chuckled. Because you're finally asking the right questions. Logan's jaw clenched. Then tell me, if you are so smart, how to fix this? Hunter looked at him curiously. Now, Logan, you're finally starting to think like a player. A sparkle flickered in his eyes. But I'm afraid you'll have to find the truth yourself. Silence fell in the studio again. For the first time in his life, Logan wasn't sure he was on anyone's side. Logan sat staring at the screen, but the numbers, graphs, and names no longer mattered. His thoughts raced like a rat in a maze. Joe watched him silently, giving him time to digest what he saw. Are you saying that everything we did was pointless? Logan's voice was muffled. Joe had changed, but with a tinge of regret. Not exactly. It made sense to those who keep you in the game. Logan's head snapped up. For whom? For the real players, Joe squinted. The ones you've never seen. Logan chuckled, shaking his head. This all sounds like another conspiracy theory. Why do you really believe in some kind of shadow elite ruling the world? Do you believe that power really belongs to the people? Logan froze. Let's put it this way, Hunter continues. Imagine you're the owner of a casino. You have a number of slot machines, poker tables, roulettes. You let people come in, place bets, win, lose, scream, rejoice, get angry. They feel like they're part of the game. They believe they can crush the jackpot. Joe paused. But none of them ever asks the main question. Logan swallowed. Which? Who supports the casino? The studio was created around Logan. You understand? Joe leaned closer. You and your friends, you're players in this casino. You're given chips, you're entertained, you're fueled by small wins. But while you're arguing with each other about who's the better player, discover the owner of the casino, and you always win. Logan felt a chill run through him in response. But we've achieved a lot, he said, more to himself than anything else. We've made the authorities listen. We've changed the laws. Joe shook his head. You think you changed them? Logan raised his eyebrows. What do you mean? Tell me. Joe crossed his arms over his chest. How many times have your movements required something? Hundreds. Thousands took to the streets. True. Now tell me, how many times did the authorities agree? A little, but she still went. Hunter changed. Now ask yourself the main question. He paused. Why do they sometimes leave? Logan frowned. The reasons why we create pressure. Because it's in their interests, Joe interrupted. Logan opened his mouth, but froze. Haven't you noticed? Hunter moved forward slightly. How strangely your victories coincided with your interests. How the right laws appeared at the right moment. How loud protests died down immediately after someone was fired, someone was punished, something was supported. Logan knew what to say. He should have said that it wasn't true. But things started to pop into his head. Case after case. Year after year. They give you crumbs so you think you're going to win. So you don't have to ask those questions. Logan shrugged. What do you think are the right questions? Joe smiled. For example, who pays for your protest? Logan snorted. We are independent activists. People make donations themselves. Is it true? The data on the screen changed again. Donor lists. Amounts. Technologies. Political funds. Logan felt his insides turn over. Among the names were not only the main corporation, but also myself, who openly supported the technologies they expected to fight. No, he muttered. It's impossible. Perhaps, said Joe, because you were blind. Logan wanted to object, but his throat tightened. All this, he swallowed hard. It doesn't mean we should give up. True, Joe straightened up. But that means you can't fight by their rules anymore. The studio was once again equipped with silence. Logan felt something important crumbling inside him. And with this came the realization. He could no longer turn a blind eye to this. Logan felt the ground slipping out from under his feet. He was confident in his region, in his right, in what makes this world a better place. And now he was sitting across from Joe Hunter, and he was beginning to realize that he had been playing by someone else's rules all this time. So you're suggesting we surrender? His voice sounded harsh, even to him. Joe chuckled, tilting his head to the side. Surrender? No, buddy. I suggest you open your eyes. Logan clenched his fists, barely containing his anger. You say that everything we did was pointless. No, Joe shook his head. I'm saying that everything you did was controlled. Logan leaned forward sharply. You don't understand how much pain, how many victims, how much life people put into measures for change. Oh, I understand. Joe's expression changed. You know who else understands? Those who support your struggle to make money and strengthen their power. Logan felt the rage boiling inside him. So what now? Are you saying there's no point in fighting? That we should just accept it? Joe leaned closer, his eyes narrowing. I want to say that the fight that was imposed on you is not yours. Logan didn't look away. Then what's the point? Joe chuckled. Now that, my friend, is a question you should ask yourself. Logan leaned back sharply. Convenient, he muttered. Joe watched him with some strange expressions that showed sympathy and attention. You see, Logan, his voice was soft, almost fatherly. You've lived your whole life in a world where you've been told what you should fight for. What slogans to chant? What faces are considered enemies? What ideas are considered real? He paused. But have you ever wondered why you continue to fight for this very thing? Logan clenched his teeth. Are you saying that this was all a setup? I want to say that your anger was directed where it was beneficial. Logan exhaled, feeling a new confidence rise within him. Not anger, not fear, but something else. If this is true, if all this really is manipulation, what should I do now? Joe smiled, expecting exactly this question. It's your choice, Logan. But now you know one thing. If you play by someone else's rules, you'll never win. Logan turned slowly. Something inside him broke. But along with this, something new appeared. The desire to understand who actually writes the rules of this game. Logan sat, clutching the numbers, in a silence that was more oppressive than any words. Everything he knew, everything he believed in, now seemed alien. He saw the world he had fought in, but now from the other side. You can continue to believe in fairy tales. Joe's voice was soft, but there was steel in it. Or you can start thinking differently. Logan's jaw clenched. You think you're the only one who's figured out the system? His voice was full of bitterness. All these years you've been sitting here, giving lessons, and what's changed? Joe chuckled. Good question. Now ask yourself. Logan frowned. You're going back to years of negotiations, but what have you changed? Joe continues. Logan had heard this question before. He hated this question, because now he couldn't answer it. So what now? He looked up slowly. What do you suggest? Joe looked at him searchingly. You want a simple answer? There isn't one. Logan snorted. Comfortable. It's awkward. Joe corrected him. It's complicated. He straightened up, resting his elbows on the table. The world does not change from loud slogans. It changes from power. Logan looked at him with disbelief. So now I have to become part of this system? No, Joe smiled. You have to stop thinking that she can break by playing by someone else's rules. Logan took pity on his lips. So what should I do? Joe leaned back in his chair. It depends on you. But now you know the main thing. He paused. Will you be a pawn or a player? Logan felt something cold run down his spine. There was no answer. What he now realized was that the game was just beginning. Logan announced from the studio, feeling the cold air hit him in the face. He thought deeply, but it didn't help. Everything inside him turned upside down. Well, did you destroy him? Ben, his friend and comrade, patted him on the shoulder. Logan looked at him, not knowing what to answer. Destroyed? No. He came there to win. To prove that their fight was real. That they were on the right path. But instead he woke up. Logan? Ben frowned. Logan ran his hand over his face. Everything's fine. His voice sounded hoarse. Ben laughed. You look so serious. Forget it, dude. This is all bullshit. There's a new protest tomorrow. Logan felt the emptiness in his chest widen. Another protest. Another day in the same game. Another battle where he doesn't know his real enemies. He looked at Ben and realized that he was a real Spitfire. Just like he did just a few hours ago. Logan pulled his phone out of his pocket, his fingers automatically sliding across the screen. News. Analytics. Headlines. Scandalous interview. Hunter versus activist. Revealing or manipulating? Who is really leading the protests? He felt anger boiling inside him. No, Joe. Not on the system. On myself. All this time he believed that he was in control of his life. But now he knew. He was simply playing by someone else's rules. The phone vibrated in his hand. Message. Unknown number. Now you know. Are you ready to learn more? Logan held his breath. He looked at the screen, then at Ben, who was saying something, not noticing that his friend had already gone far ahead. Logan felt there was no turning back. He is no longer who he was. And now he had to decide what to do with the truth. He didn't ask, but he could no longer stand next to her. You've spent your whole life believing that you were fighting for what's right, that you were changing the world, that your voice mattered. But what if it's a lie? What if you're just a pawn in someone else's game? Logan thought he was negotiating, but one meeting changed everything. For the first time, he saw a real system, the one that never makes the headlines, the one that writes the rules and controls the players. Now he knows the truth. Now he must decide whether to continue playing by someone else's rules or to become the one who writes them. There is no turning back. Subscribe to the channel, like, and click the bell to not miss new stories that will make you think. Because sometimes the truth is scarier than any lie.